when we all understand what the problem is, then we can help fix it. It's not about covering your ass. It's about the teamwork. Antiguan society in general, has a kind of cover my ass sort of mentality.
Cover my ass, cover my eyes, cover my ears.
Yes.
Hello, podcast fans, and welcome back to Grassroots Radio. I am your host, Unique Bird, back after a little unexpected hiatus. It's a pleasure to be back, feeling pretty great, and so happy to bring you this interview with Ashton Fearon, who is another member of the ticketing team and our third and final guest in our tech entrepreneurship series. As far as exploring the world of tech entrepreneurship in Antigua and Barbuda goes, Ashton has definitely covered so much ground. In addition to being an entrepreneur as part of the ticketing team, he has also worked with the government in the Ministry of Information, being instrumental in creating the GATE program. He's also now in the private sector working with Digicel. So it was very fascinating to get all these different perspectives rolled into one. Next week, we will be starting our series on sex and sex education. So be sure to tune in for our very first episode in that series with Marcella and Aisha from the YouTube channel Let's Talk Sex. And now, here's Ashton Fearon to let you know who he is.
My name's Ashton Fearon. I am, how old am I? 35. I guess I do a little bit of everything. I am currently the business solutions executive at Digicel, but I also work with ticketing events app. And I also do a bit of instruction at the UE Open Campus in project management.
Business Solutions Executive. Can you give me a bit of an idea of what that actually means and what your day-to-day life in your job is like?
Business Solutions Executive, essentially the role means that I deal with business sales, whether it's corporate mobile or internet services or anything, any sort of product or solution that a business might need. They would come to one of our business executives, which would include myself, and we would recommend, the best solutions that we have available through our partners or through whatever services we offer. Working for Digicel at this point in time is a bit challenging. At the moment, we've been getting a bit of bad commentary about our mobile network, and with APUA's new network and the challenges that we face with that, it makes life very interesting at Digicel. But it's all about the people, all about being able to talk to the customer. So that is essentially my job and essentially what I do at ticketing as well. Working with people.
Okay. Can you say more about your role in ticketing, kind of from the inception of it, and then has that changed over time?
So I think we were from we started. The roles have pretty much been the same. Myself and Sven, one of my partners, we both had the idea at the same time, and we both had a mutual friend that knew we had the idea at the same time, and thought, well, why don't we just team up and work together? And so I was actually, working on developing the app myself, but Sven is a much more adept coder than I am. So while I was doing the business proposal and trying to work on the app as well, I left the coding up to Sven, and I did the business aspect of it. In terms of developing the business plans and looking at how we can actually sell this product. So that is essentially my role from the inception and continuing today.
Wow. So what was it like in the early days trying to put together that plan and find avenues to actually market this product that you were building?
So in the early days, we started, I started doing some research on how we could actually get this done. We always had the intention of going to market with ticketing, but we sort of wanted to just test the waters, and we did a few surveys, did some research on how people felt about, paying for tickets online, paying for stuff online in general, what were the trends back then and so on. And,
and what were the trends back then?
Oh, well, it was only just beginning to shift, right, where persons were just, sort of starting to get comfortable with, going on Amazon, for example, and making purchases. So in 2014, not a lot of persons were really doing that. There were the few that were maybe, and it still continues today, but there were the few that, were comfortable with buying online. And so they would buy stuff for their friends who maybe didn't have a credit card or debit card and ship them in. And so a lot of people have actually made businesses just from shipping stuff in for people because they didn't have a debit card, but it's so easy right now. Everybody can do it now, and a lot more people are comfortable. So we saw the gap back then, and we saw the opportunity. And of course, we saw how much people enjoyed entertainment and fetting and these sorts of things. And so we of course went with that. And now we're sort of looking at, we're sort of reaping the benefits of having invested our time and efforts into creating that product. That it's now very commonplace and for persons to shop online. And so as persons, or as the economy has seen more persons obtain, debit and credit cards and so on, we're just now looking at maximizing our ability to provide a product that, makes it easier for them to do what they want to do.
And throughout this whole development project, did you guys rely on any incubation platforms? Did you participate in any pitch competitions? Like, how did you really get all the different pieces coming together? What kind of help did you have?
We actually, in 2015, we had the opportunity to actually go to Jamaica for a weeks-long startup boot camp. And myself.
Did you say weeks-long or week-long?
A week-long. It was a week-long, right? And myself and Sven, we went over and we basically were told, because we were basically just working on developing the product, trying to make it as good as possible before we actually put it out there. And in November of 2015, we went to this 1-week boot camp, and essentially they told us, look, if you don't put it out right away, you could be wasting your time, because if persons aren't willing to actually pay you money for it, then it could be a waste of time. So the idea was you needed at least 2 persons to start your business, a hustler and a hacker. And we had both, myself being the hustler or the business person, and Sven being the hacker or the coder, right?
Yes.
So we had that, and after that 1-week boot camp, the idea, as I was saying, was we need to get it into people's hands so they can either tell us, this idea is nonsense, or we can actually see people start using it, and then
right. It needed to be tested in the real world.
Needed to be tested in the real world. So within a few weeks after that bootcamp, we put together everything and we launched our MVP, which is basically a minimum viable product. And on Labor Day of 2015, December 26th, we had our app in the App Store, and we sold tickets to our first event in January, in the first week of January. So immediately we got feedback, we got the business going, and it was a delight just to actually sell some tickets.
That must have been exciting.
We didn't sell much tickets, but it actually worked, and persons got into the event, and we got the ball rolling from there. And so there was, in the weeks leading up to our launch, Sven was busy coding, and I was busy talking to event hosts, as we like to call them, letting them know that, look, we can save them time, we can save them money, and we can make their customers happy. That was essentially the sales pitch to them. And so we got them, because our product is different in a sense that most persons, when they launch a product, it is, business to consumer or business to business. But our product sort of splits that, and we have to deal with the customers on one side and the event hosts or the businesses on another side. And so without the two, it's like we can't, if we don't have any customers on the platform, then the event hosts aren't going to talk to us, because what's the point? But if we don't have the event hosts on the other hand, with their events and their parties, then why would the customer sign up? So I had to try and sell that to them, to the event hosts, and let them know, look, we need to get your event on there. Once we have your event, you get the customers, right? So we had to get both sides on board, and we managed to do that. And so far, we managed to do that quite well.
Yeah, well, I would say definitely quite well, because when you think of tech startups in Antigua, I mean, ticketing is kind of the top of the list. So you guys have done an amazing job.
Oh, thank you. We tried.
Well, you succeeded. You didn't just try. You've also spent a little bit of time working in the public sector. You worked in the Ministry of Information. What was your experience in that role like?
I joined the Ministry of Information in 2012. I had just completed my master's degree in London, and I had sent off an application since before I left England, actually. And when I got down, I think in about January or February of that year, I was obviously looking for work, and about April, the then minister, Dr. Mansour, he wanted to interview me, and I went in for the interview in April, thought it went pretty well. I was interviewed by the director of IT and so on, and I didn't really hear anything back. And then I got a call about a couple of weeks later from I would say sort of a mentor to me, Mr. Clement Samra, who was the telecommunications officer. So now I had applied to work in IT, right, which is slightly different. The telecommunications officer is responsible for managing the spectrum and regulating the telecommunications industry, which is essentially entails all of the major providers such as Flow, Digicel, APUA, and so on. And so it was a bit of a different role. But when I joined there, it was, I love to learn. So, I love the opportunity to get in there and learn a bit more about telecoms. And it's not so far away from IT that, I wouldn't be able to understand. But it was a slightly different aspect. But as soon as I got in there, I was put in at the deep end in terms of working with some of the top persons in the telecommunications industry. And at that time in 2012, this was coming up on the year where cable and wireless's monopoly on international calls was actually coming to an end. And so there was a lot going on in terms of, how things would play out after that. And so I was thrust into these level meetings with all sorts of persons, all sorts of lawyers and so on. And basically learning all of the jargon and the big terms about what's happening there. But suffice it to say, we made it through that, and the sector did get liberalized to some aspect. But we're also working on redeveloping the Telecommunications Act, which is still in its still in
development, maybe.
I can't even say development, because the Telecommunications Act that governs the sector right now is from 1951.
51?
Yeah, 1951. So it's very outdated.
To say the least, yeah.
Yeah, and well, there have been a few amendments. I think the last one might have been in 2003, if my memory serves me correct.
That's still a long time ago.
Yes, very, very long time ago. And that's only just a basic amendment. But so the whole telecommunications sector, the governance of it really needs to be updated. But that I'm not really going to get into. But at the time,
although it does kind of explain some things.
You're right. So at that point in time, that's where I got into. But then from that, after that, came the inception of the GATE program, the Government Assisted Technology Endeavor, which the then minister, Dr. Mansour, would have started. And part of that would have been the ICT Cadet Programme. And so the ICT Cadet Programme is essentially a boot camp that provided persons with ICT skills.
So what does ICT stand for in this instance?
Information Communication Technologies. The idea was that there are persons in our society that may live under certain circumstances where they may not be able to progress to a higher level education institution, for example, whether it's for financial reasons or otherwise. But they want to retool themselves or to gain an additional skill so that they can become valuable to the workforce. And so this boot camp was a 6-month boot camp that allowed persons who, the requirements were very basic. They had to have completed a high school, so they must have a high school diploma, and they must have a clean, a clean police record, right?
Okay, yes. No
And
criminals.
right, right, and essentially a love for IT, right? So the
There
boot
was no
camp then
requirements on like how many subjects they had to have graduated with?
no,
Okay.
no
Yeah, that's good.
requirements because we didn't want to keep anyone out,
For
right?
sure.
And because the idea was, you know, if you didn't get a grade 1 in IT if you got a grade 1 in IT at CXE, then you didn't need to come to this course, right?
Right.
You're already valuable and have the skill sets for the world of work in this age. So this was for persons that wanted a different opportunity, wanted the ability to get some hands-on training in different areas of IT. So when we launched the program, I was able to get the program certified as a Cisco training academy. And so we provided hands-on training in the IT Essential course by Cisco. So persons were able to start learning in that aspect. And then we also provided hands-on training in photography, videography at the very beginning, as well as Photoshop. So those are some key new media skills, as well as a few other things there. We eventually also got the program certified as a Microsoft Imagine Academy. So persons were able to they had access to all of these Microsoft courses for programming in HTML5, looking at also doing, if you wanted to do, get a certification in the Office suite, Microsoft Word and Excel and so on, you could also do that. So, we had access to all of the content available for you to be able to do that. And over the course we started the program in, I think, August 2013. We had about 5 cohorts that passed through with about an average of about 35 cadets each. So, you're looking at about over 200 persons that would have went through that course and gained hands-on skills in those areas.
Yeah, that's really great. So you're very much helping to redirect people who may struggle a little bit entering the world of work and giving them these really valuable, marketable skills.
Yeah, exactly.
And, yeah,
exactly.
Is that program still running today?
Yes, it is. I left it in the good tutelage of another colleague of mine, and she herself is a certified Cisco trainer. So, I believe it is still ongoing. But I obviously I don't work there anymore. I'm now working at Digicel, but yes, it was to be still continued through the ministry.
So you mentioned that you studied in London, England, and I was wondering if you worked at all while you were there, or did you kind of complete your studies and then immediately return to Antigua?
So I actually had an interesting scenario that happened to me. So while I was there, I didn't work in IT much. But I did, between doing my master's, I did work for a year in Trinidad and in the management consultancy field. So it completely.
Yeah, how did that happen?
So actually, my father's from Trinidad, and while there during the summer, one year, I had to reapply for my student visa, and I didn't get it. So,
Oh no.
so I ended up having to stay in Trinidad. And so while I was there, I just started looking for work. And there was a small management consultancy firm that gave me an opportunity, and I gained some experience there.
Interesting. Do you happen to know like what in particular made you attractive to this firm, even though you're not really in that field necessarily?
So I think what made me attractive, I guess, one, my personality.
Ooh.
I'm very easy to work with. But at the time, at the time I would have completed my bachelor's degree in computer networking. So I guess my experience there would have helped my application. And so they were looking just for someone sort of as an IT intern type position.
Mm-hmm.
So I actually enrolled with them with the Trinidad on the jobs program, on the job training program.
Okay.
So it sort of worked as an in for me there.
Just touching again on your time in the government, what would you say are like the biggest differences working in the public sector versus the private sector? Not everyone has both those experiences.
Well, so the reason why I left the public sector was because I really wanted to get a sense of how things work in the corporate world, right? Digicel is a multinational company
Mm-hmm.
and a regional company as well. And so really for me, the going to Digicel was a great pathway for me to see how I could use that experience to further develop ticketing, right? Because we wanted to go regional as well. I guess the biggest difference for me between the working in the private sector and working in the public sector, the public sector has a little bit more bureaucracy, and it's interesting the way how our ministers of government, even though you see that yes, they sort of set the policies, but on a day-to-day how government actually works is really through like the permanent secretaries and just people in their various agencies and departments just doing the work. So it's very interesting to sort of see that in action. And my time there, I spent a lot more time with because while I was there was a change of government as well, and that was a whole thing as well. How that how that sort of works out is very interesting. But in the I guess my first couple of years with the previous government, it was a lot more hands-on, and I guess that's just based on how the different ministers sort of conduct their business.
Right. So you would have gone from, did you say it was Mansour?
Yes.
To
Mansour to
Melford Nicholas.
That's correct. Yeah.
Right. Cool. Yeah, that must have been quite the change, because you're kind of on a track. You're doing one thing, and you have all these different irons in the fire, and then someone comes in who's now running the show, who has to be caught up. You got to bring them up to speed.
Yeah, and exactly. And so then the priorities then change, and then you sort of find yourself not so much the priority, but if you're not working in a particular department, then you can find that maybe this area doesn't get as much attention because the minister's focus might be on something else. And that's fine, but it requires, I guess, a lot of, what I could say is that the job that I was doing didn't need much supervising. So I was basically acting autonomously because the minister had the confidence in me and what I was doing based on my track record. But then you sort of then look at how the minister has to do a lot more, is giving a lot more focus to maybe other areas of the ministry, because, there are several departments within that one ministry. There's information, telecommunications, broadcasting, and information technology, so 4 separate portfolios. And then he also has other roles within government and so on. So, you don't get as much time as you used to, at least from my perspective. But it was just interesting to see how that worked,
Do you think that you would ever return to working in the public sector? Like, is that something that you could see happening in the future, maybe at a higher level? Well, obviously at a higher level than you were before.
In the area that I was, maybe not. To me, the only other levels that are of any, significance would be either at the permanent secretary level or as a minister. And I'm not so sure about the ministerial position. And permanent secretaries, they have a tough time. So, I think I'll probably stay away from government for a little while.
Well, you have a lot of things going on. So you're working at Digicel, you're part of the ticketing team, and you're also part of Silicon Dadli. Can you tell me about Silicon Dadli and what your role is there?
Essentially, what the idea was with a sort of burgeoning tech community, we thought we didn't really have a voice. And part of the reason why I think I got involved was, so this was maybe around 2017, I think. And at that point in time, the Ministry of Information was again trying to update the Telecommunications Act from the 1951 Act.
Right.
And so it was to be read in Parliament so that it could be, changed into a bill and get passed into a bill and so on. And so at that time, we wanted the opportunity to have our voices heard from the tech community, what we thought about this bill. And so we didn't really have an organization or an entity that we could turn to that could sort of lay our position out on the table to government and say, well, look, we don't like this, or, we're in favor of that, that sort of thing. And so that's, I think, how Silicon Dadli was born. And just the general ability to socialize and communicate with like-minded individuals. The lawyers have their association,
right.
The accountants have their association. There was no association for tech professionals in the field. And as well, I think part of the reason there as well was a lot of people, or the general public, I don't think really understood, what a tech professional was. And in some cases, and in some particular fields, like, for example, design, persons in those sort of creative fields in the tech industry would be taken advantage of,
In what
so
sense?
We didn't like. So in what sense, you ask? So I've heard many stories, and myself have experienced, where companies or individuals, they will go to somebody and ask them for a website design or a flyer design or something, right? And they will ask you to do this work either for free, or they don't want to pay you for the time invested in this work. Let us say you have a company that has a proposal out, right? They want a new website. If you put in your proposal and you say, look, we can build this website for you. These are the costs. And maybe you give some examples of all the work that you've done similar. Before hiring you, they want you to prepare a demo, right?
Right.
Now, for maybe some larger companies who have the resources, they can easily knock up a demo. They probably have, 10 or 20 developers that they can, utilize those resources and put it together.
Mm-hmm.
But if you are working in Antigua as a creative or as a developer, the time and effort that you put into creating a fully functioning website, right? You could be using that time and effort to actually build something for somebody that's paying.
Yeah.
Right. So
and
that's
then
what
you
I
could
mean
also
in the
put in
sense.
that time, build a demo, and then they still go with somebody else. So that's just
They could still go with somebody.
Yeah.
Exactly. Now, and so this is what I mean by being taken advantage of, because persons do not place a value on the time that professionals in our field, in the tech community, the time and effort that they put into the work that they're doing, and the sense of value that persons have for the community. It doesn't bode well, and so we thought that by creating this association, we would be able to better educate the public about the tech field and what it means, and some of the things that you can and can't do, and what you can ask for. Just so that persons in the field would know that, look, they have persons that they can go to for support, and we would be able to provide guidance in terms of what you should and shouldn't do. Because a lot of persons as well in the field sometimes don't know their worth and don't know their rights in terms of how they should go about charging a customer or not charging a customer, and how much work they should be putting in before they actually get a signed contract. So we thought that we would be able to put together this association and do that. And so we went about, did that, and we have in terms of paying members, maybe not so many, maybe about 10, I would say. But the community has, I guess, developed its blossom. We have a grouping, or at least a WhatsApp group of over 100 persons. And these are persons in all sort of different fields in the tech industry. And we communicate on a regular basis about lots of different topics and so on. And we've had the opportunity to meet and network with these persons. So we also provided a networking opportunity for persons in different fields. So I think that was a good initiative in terms of just bringing the minds together.
I would definitely agree. When I first became aware of that group, I was very happy to see something like that, because I know, I guess I kind of count as a creative too, but working here in Canada, there are so many of these different associations. There's so many different little hubs around that you can go meet other people and really find collaborators or get advice, find mentors, all that kind of stuff. So I think having that in Antigua is really important as well. I wonder though, what do you think is the reason why these fields aren't really being taken seriously. The field or the professionals occupying the field aren't being taken seriously and treated as valuable by kind of the society at large.
I would say it's maybe beginning to change a little bit, but I would say when we first started to get together, that the main drawback or the main problem was that education. The public was not really educated in terms of the value of these resources. For example, let's say I own a shop selling clothes, in Vendors Mall or wherever, right? One, I may not have a lot of spare cash to pay somebody to develop a logo and a flyer to help my business and so on, right? So they may see somebody just starting out and say, hey, why don't you put together something for me and to help get you out there, right?
Exposure.
To get exposure, yes. Yeah. Being paid in exposure, right?
That's a big one.
Yeah, and so you'll find that a lot of persons would do that, but then at the same time, a lot of persons in the field doing the work, they wouldn't see any other way to actually get by. So they would end up having to do it that way. And so I think it's sort of perpetuated in that persons have been going ahead and, doing the work at either cut prices or, doing it for exposure simply because they didn't have a sort of a backing from an institution or an association that would say, well, no, look, if the value of your work is X, you should stick with that. Your time obviously is money, right? Because you're going to spend a lot of time developing this, and you have to set your prices accordingly. And I guess as well, part of the reason maybe, Antigua has a very small market for these things, and so those highly skilled persons that have been trained to do this kind of work may not be able to find the income to actually generate a proper income based on the market size here. And I wanted to make one other point, but it's just escaping me at the moment. So I'll circle around and come back to it.
Okay. Well, one of the other things that I've heard from a lot of creative or tech entrepreneurs in Antigua is that those big contracts or nice juicy contracts will get given to people from outside of the country. Do you find that that's happening in your circles?
Somewhat, yes. I think part of why that may happen is there isn't really good communication from those entities that have these big contracts. And maybe it's because they don't know that, there are persons here that can actually do it. Some entities do know, right? And they choose to go otherwise. But I think there are quite a number of persons that don't know that there are professionals here that can do that work. And so they don't put it out there or to communicate it in an effective way for persons to respond. There isn't, for example, there isn't like a job section in the newspaper. I mean, there's the classified ads, but not really a proper jobs area, where you can see different proposals and whatnot that you might see in sort of other bigger countries and so on.
Yeah, just from time to time, there are job postings that someone specifically will pay to take out an ad, basically just a regular ad. That is a job ad. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. But there isn't an area where you can go and, in the newspaper and see, this ministry, for example, has a request for proposal for this and that. And so these opportunities sort of remain hidden. Mm-hmm. And only if you know where exactly to look, you might be able to see certain opportunities. So yeah, I think it's just a bit of a closed door kind of thing where persons we're not really seeing that communication. And I guess, Silicon Dadli was to be that sort of place where you could come and see see that sort of information. We are looking to revive that in 2020 and work on getting that information out there to those persons that want to see.
Great, help to open up some of those closed doors.
Yeah, exactly.
So I interviewed Colin Jenkins a while back, and he's a project manager in a different sense because he's more into architecture and construction projects. So how is your type of project management different from that type of project management?
So project management is project management. All right. The methodologies are the same, and we both are sort of guided by the same principles. There are a few, I guess, additional what we call knowledge areas in construction and architecture, but the core principles are pretty much the same. Colin's route to project management is a little bit different to mine. Colin, I think, did his master's in project management, whereas I would have gone the certification route through PMI, which is the Project Management Institute. The Project Management Institute is a global organization, and they are the persons that certify PMPs, which are project management professionals. And they provide the knowledge base for what is project management. And so I gained my certification by taking a 4-hour-long exam, whereas Colin did his master's, right? But essentially the tools and the methodologies, tools and techniques are all the same. So yeah.
Okay. And why would you say to someone who doesn't know and is wondering, why would I take project management? What is the use of this? What is the importance, and what does having this skill set allow you to do that perhaps you couldn't do without it?
You manage projects every day. Your life is a project, right?
Amen.
It's a work in progress, but essentially, you're looking at formulating a plan for your life, and what are the goals and objectives of this plan, and how are you going to achieve those goals and objectives? And you're going to use certain tools and techniques to aid you in achieving those goals. Project management is essentially about getting things done. What I would say to someone who's interested in project management is projects, you can do them in any field, in any sector, whether it's telecoms, IT. I work in IT with ticketing, whether it's a startup or a really big company, you have the opportunity to do project management. In any company, you're going to have certain strategic objectives. A project has a beginning and an end. It's a short-term endeavor. right? And what the goal of initiating a project in for a company that wants to reach those strategic objectives, they can do so by initiating a project that will allow them to change their modus operandi, right? Allow them to move from one level to another level of operation, right? And you will use project management to get there. So whether that is doing a study or creating a new product or creating a new service that you want to offer to your customers, project management will get you there. So if I say that I have a bakery and I want to create a new type of pastry, right? What do I need to do to be able to do that? I maybe need to buy some ovens and some new pastry chefs and all of that. So getting to that state of implementation, of having those ovens and the new chefs and all of that, I can use a project manager to go about implementing, initiating, and getting that project done, so that I can now offer this new product. All right. And in terms of, I can use ticketing as an example. In terms of ticketing, where we look at, we're constantly developing our product, right? And so it's project management, but in an agile sort of situation. So basically every week we're sort of doing another project because we're implementing this new feature, or we're working towards this new goal, and those goals can change based on customer priorities, right? What do the customers want? This is what they want. What new features do we need to implement? And so we change and are very agile in our approach to how we go about creating those new products or features and so on. So project management has helped me to have less wastage, have more efficient production, making sure that we get things done on time by a certain time. So I utilize project management in, so I'm not just the sales rep at ticketing, but I also work with my colleagues on a daily basis, making sure they're reaching their targets, making sure, we're getting our priorities done so that we can meet our goals.
Right, you're kind of the navigator.
Yeah. And project management, has different methodologies, different flavors that you can sort of look at.
What's your favorite flavor?
My favorite flavor. Looking at the agile approach to project management, I've sort of started getting into Scrum, which is a very precise way of managing a project. And so in this instance, I would be the Scrum Master, where I'm basically directing persons as to what they need to do. So yeah, it's very interesting. And yeah, they have this Scrum Master certification that you can do. It's really cool.
Cool. Sounds like a cool title. I like it. And so there's an ethical portion to project management that you seem to place an emphasis on. So can you tell me, is that something that you always cared a lot about, the ethics of things, or was there some event or situation that kind of caused you to shift in that direction?
The field of project management is all about transparency and telling the truth. So the only way to manage a project is by having good information from those that are working with you. So if I am managing a project and I know we have certain deadlines and certain things that we need to hit, certain targets that we need to hit, if persons are not telling me the truth, right, then we may miss those deadlines because they may say, well, I'm going to finish this by such and such a day, right? But if it's really taking longer than expected, I need to know why. I need to know what is causing that, because you want to get to the root of the problem, and there's something in project management called root cause analysis, right? Where you ask why 3 times. Why is this happening? Okay, this is the reason. Okay, why is that happening? So it's, and you end up with getting down to the real cause of the problem. So is it the person's skill sets? Do they not have enough skill? Do they need to be trained? Is it somebody in a different department is not getting them the information they need to finish their work? So with my influence as a project manager, if I know these things, then I can better help that person succeed at their role, thereby helping the bigger picture, the overall project succeed, right? So telling the truth is very important. So honesty and visibility into all aspects of the project is very important for a project manager. And so we hold up these ethical values as very important, because at the end of the day, if my team has to be truthful with me, and I have to be truthful to the sponsor of this project, or the person that I'm doing the project for. And if I say to my business partner that this project is going to be done by such and such a day, and I say it not knowing the full facts, and I'm sort of just guessing, then ethically, I'm not really being a project manager. I'm just sort of being a coordinator of sorts,
or supervisor,
right? And so we live by those ethics because we want to ensure that the project management field lives up to a certain standard, and so even doing the PMI certification exam, they ask a lot of questions about ethicalness, and some people probably fail simply because they're taking the experience that they do day to day on their job, and this is what sort of tends to happen in a work environment. Persons sort of withhold a little bit of information, thinking, I can probably try and correct this before anybody finds out.
Right. Whereas, the cover your ass mentality.
Yes, exactly. So, we try to, as project managers, say, well, look, it's not about covering your ass. It's about the teamwork, and when we all understand what the problem is, then we can help, fix it. Antiguan society in general, has a kind of cover my ass sort of mentality.
Cover my ass, cover my eyes, cover my ears.
It's something that I sort of hold dear to my heart, because, I want to see persons not working with that kind of mentality, but rather, sort of change the script and be open about it. Because at the end of the day, if you don't highlight the problem now, then it's going to become a bigger problem later down the line.
Absolutely.
And that's no good for anybody.
Yeah. Is that part of the reason why you're an instructor in project management, like trying to put more of this kind of mentality out into the world and into the culture in particular?
Exactly. I mean, I do it also because it helps me keep abreast of, the learning in project management and so on. But I really find joy in speaking to people about, doing this in their workplace and having that kind of mentality, so that persons, so that it can basically filter through to everyone. to promulgate in different areas of the economy, different areas in Antiguan society. I really enjoy that.
What are your class sizes like?
I've done about 3 classes at UE Open Campus, 3 terms I've been teaching. And this term, the enrollment was pretty small, so they only did 1 class. So I'm actually not teaching this semester. But Colin, I think, has started this semester. So his class, but on average, they've been about maybe 15 to 20 persons per class.
Okay, yeah, pretty good.
For the last 3 semesters, they had 2 classes every semester. So myself and Colin were teaching at the same time.
So I guess from a cultural perspective, what is kind of holding us back as a nation from actually becoming a powerhouse of sorts, especially as it regards technology?
All right, that's an interesting question. From my perspective, I would have already touched on the Telecommunications Act. That, to me, is one of the biggest hurdles for our society. And the reason being, without competition, right, there is no incentive for prices to go down. And not having modern telecommunications legislation means that, currently there's only one provider that can provide fixed broadband services in Antigua. And
is that APUA?
Yes, it is. So without the proliferation of steady, reliable internet, right, which is best served through a fixed media, such as fiber, or we have DSL lines as well. But without that reliable internet, we will continue to be consumers of technology as opposed to producers of content and producers of media. And it's difficult because without the modern legislation, without modern Telecommunications Act, we have one provider that is able to do that, right? Other providers are looking at wireless solutions for that, but wireless solutions are more expensive. So the cost of broadband is high. I think we pay per meg the highest in the Caribbean. Wow. And probably the hemisphere as well.
That would be alarming. Yeah,
so per meg, in terms of just download speed, if you look at the cost per meg in terms of download speed, Antigua on average has the highest cost per meg. And so that is a deterrent straight off the bat, and that's only going to change once there's competition. But it makes it very difficult without a modern legislative framework to be able to have that competition, to have lower prices for consumers. So I think, in a nutshell, that's where it is. That is the key thing that is holding us back in terms of becoming a powerhouse in terms of technology. When you look at the other islands, where it's, and Antigua is a very unique place, not just in the Caribbean, but in the world. I actually did a course on telecommunications law, maybe in 2015, somewhere around there. And while I was doing the course, they had a case study on Antigua.
Oh, wow.
And this is for a course in Washington or something, right?
Wow.
So Antigua is a very unique place. And most countries have 2, major providers, right, of telecommunication services.
Yes.
If you think about the United States, Verizon and AT&T, right, you have the sort of smaller one. Well, the market share is a bit smaller in terms of T-Mobile and Sprint and so on.
Right.
But then you look at the size of the United States, right? It's 360 million people, right? So they can afford to have more carriers, but it's just there are still two major providers. Antigua, on the other hand, with 80,000, or if you want to say 100,000 persons in Antigua, we have 4 telecommunications operators. 2 major ones historically would have been Flow and Digicel, but then we also have AT&T. Sorry, not AT&T, APUA, and we also have ACT. So ACT also provides internet services. The argument here is that APUA is in a very unique position because they are government owned, right? Fully government owned, and they also have they also control our utilities.
Yes.
So they do electricity, water, and telecoms. And so they're competing in what should be a private space. You have 3 other private entities that they're competing with. As a public company, they're competing with 3 other private providers. And in addition to that, APUA has its own act. So there is an APUA act, and essentially they regulate themselves.
I don't see any problems at all there.
If you watch Government Information Services channel or any debates on TV in Parliament, you realize that there is Melford Nicholas, who is the Minister for IT, right? So anything to do with IT and telecoms. And then you have the Minister for APUA,
yes,
right? Which is Robin Yearwood. And those 2 are always at loggerheads because they can never agree on how the telecommunications industry should be managed. Hence why the 2017 bill that was proposed and read in Parliament has never been passed into an act because they just can't seem to find a way forward. So I don't know when we will ever get this new modern telecommunications legislation unless it puts APUA at an advantage. And the Prime Minister, in his throne speech, has now said that, Digicel and Flow are offering pricey, crappy service, and we're going to put money into APUA so that they can become, the best provider on the island. And possibly they may want to also expand into other islands. I don't know, but I think
APUA
that's probably...
will expand into other islands?
Well, let me not say APUA, INET.
Okay.
That, I think, is probably where they're heading.
Weird flex, but okay.
I mean, it's not a weird flex. If you look at what our Honorable Prime Minister has been doing, he is basically looking at all the institutions in Antigua and Barbuda and saying, we want to basically ensure their survivability. So you look at West Indies Oil, you look at what's happening with Scotiabank and RBC being bought out by local banks. So he's really, if you look at the policies that he started setting, he's really trying to strengthen our institutions here in Antigua, which is very admirable, I must say. But with the telecommunications sector, you have, WEOC has one competitor with Rubis. The bank situation is a little bit different, but then you have 3 other entities in the market in the telecommunications industry. One also being local, which is ACT. And essentially you're saying to ACT, which is another local provider, well, look, the government is not going to facilitate your business. We want to strengthen APUA. And then you're also kicking out or making it harder for the other entities, Digicel and Flow, to compete in the market, right? Because they don't have the legislation to allow them to put in fixed line services. So they have to come up with other strategies, other more expensive strategies. And then at the same time, you're telling them that you want them to have cheaper prices, or cheaper services. So it's kind of weird, but I see what he's trying to do. But we'll see how that plays out.
Yeah, I mean, the goals themselves are admirable, strengthen the institutions, but if you kind of take a longer term view and look downstream at the effects of strengthening the institutions for the sake of strengthening the institutions, like you're saying, the prices, there's no incentive for prices to be lower if you have a monopoly, which is kind of being created with the APUA getting all the preferences. And you could say a similar thing for the banks as well. I mean, if you get it down to a place where there's only 2 banks locally, and one of them is kind of offshore-ish, then everybody's banking in the same place. Your fees won't necessarily be lower either. And then there's also the question of, if we just have less institutions and less privately owned businesses, then is the government the only game in town?
Yeah, so it's that long-term view is really important, what is the end goal there at the end of the day? How are our other local private institutions, how are they going to fare in the long run? And from different perspectives, well, in different industries, you have to look at different factors to really judge that properly. But in terms of IT, I'm not so sure that this is the right move.
Well, time will give us the answer to that question. I guess if you could wave a magic wand and change one thing, whether it be about your sector or something completely different, in Antigua and Barbuda, what would that thing be that you would change?
Fries Hillwood.
Enough said. That needs no explanation.
Sorry, okay. I drive on it every day, so it's tough.
Yeah, it's a frustrating thing. Especially, I mean, I'm just a visitor at this point, but when you come down one year and you're like, okay, this road is not great, but then the next year you come back and it's worse.
It's worse.
After they claim that they fixed it.
Yeah.
Like, I cannot bring people to this country. Oh my God. For anyone who wants to stay in touch with you and see all the great stuff that you're up to, what would be the best place for them to follow you online?
I mean, if you want to know what event I'll probably be at, you need to check out the ticketing app. I guess you can reach me on Twitter at Ashton268. Or, I mean, if you want business-wise, on LinkedIn.
Thank you so much, Ashton. This has been a really great chat. It was good getting to know you a little bit, and maybe we'll do this again some point.
Well, yeah, you're doing a great job. I like what you guys are doing.
Oh, thanks so much. Appreciate that.
Thank you for listening to this episode of Grassroots Radio. If you enjoyed the conversation, show some love and help spread the word. You can do that by subscribing on Apple, Google, YouTube, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts. Already subscribed? Consider leaving a 5-star review. It helps other people find the show. If you have an idea for someone you want to see featured or a topic you want us to cover, let us know. DM us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram at GrassrootsANU or email us at thenewgrassroots@gmail.com. For more about NGR, visit us at thenewgrassroots.com. Until next time, this is Grassroots Radio.